Initially, as I remember, this boot was kind of embraced by the working classes, and we're talking about real working classes. We're talking about factory workers, policemen, postmen and things like that.
The origins of Dr. Martens lie in Northamptonshire, English Midlands. It was a family, Griggs family, who'd been making boots since 1901.
We were quite industrious people. It so happened that my grandfather, whose name was Bill Griggs, he saw an advertisement in the Shoe and Leather News in the late 50s, advertising this revolutionary new process, which was known as Dr. Martens, or Dr. Martens as it was then. It was just after the war that Klaus Martens apparently was skiing in the Alps, and he had this terrible accident. He hurt his foot so badly that he ended up in hospital. And then that's when the brainwave hit him, I think, you know, like a light bulb on the head, really, of the idea of an air cushion sole. Dr. Funk and Dr. Martens were old student friends. Martens knew that his idea, his air cushion sole idea, would need somebody who had the background and the knowledge and the intelligence to be able to put that into action.
If you look at the birth of Dr. Martens, in terms of the sole, it was purely an inventive mind that created that. So it was an extremely creative moment that invented the sole. Likewise, it was an extremely creative thought to pair up this classically staid English Middle England family with this idea of this very unusual product, this very unusual footwear sole from Germany. So on the part of the Griggs family, that's a leap of faith.
I guess I got my first pair of Martens when I was a skinhead, believe it or not. And I've got to be clear here, we're talking about the fashion version, not the fascist version that would kind of rear its ugly head later. And luckily for me, get stomped out of existence as well.
It was basically a statement of like, fuck you to the hippies. You know, you ain't gonna wear boots, you're not gonna shave your head, you're not gonna wear working jeans tight, are you? So that's what we're gonna do, because we're not middle class, we're not hippies.
I also remember going to gigs in the 70s and seeing people like Pete Townsend of The Who, you know, doing his fancy guitar moves, and some people would notice the windmill, some people would notice his white jumpsuit, but some of us noticed his boots, and they were Dr. Martens.
Townsend was conscious of the fact that by wearing Dr. Martens boots, he was making a statement about working class.
My next door neighbour goes, right, when I got to 12, we've got to go and get you a pair of Dr. Martens, and I was really excited. And I was thinking, yeah, get my rites of passage. So he went out and bought a pair of Dr. Martens and went in and kicked in a metal grit bin. You know the grit bins that they put for the road? Kicked one in, and that was it. We weren't as unsociable as people would like to think we were. It wasn't like American History X and Romper Stomper. They're movies, everybody. If it's working class, it's right wing. What's that all about?
So just as the skinheads kind of used the Martin boot to kind of rebel against the whole hippie movement, I think the punks picked up on the rebellious aspect and attitude of the boot, if you will, to kind of say, actually, we're rebelling against everything. We're rewriting the rules, and this is a cultural ground zero. And the only thing that we're taking with us is the Dr. Martens boot.
Back in the day when I first saw them as a child, in the 70s, there was something that was outside of society. There was something for me that represented revolution, anarchy, you know, being different, like giving the middle finger.
If you don't conform in Britain, it's always a struggle, but I'm not going to change the way I am. I just don't lick arses, basically. I just do how I want to do it.
I think a lot of it was the street attitude.
I guess everyone just looked kind of cool when they wore it, a little bit badass.
People have got to understand that punk isn't this thing with mohawks and safety pins and loud guitars and nihilism and negativity. It was never about that. It was about empowerment, individuality and freedom.
That's the irony of a thing. It's a total paradox. It's like when you destroy everything, what are you left with? So then when you decide what that is, it's really exciting. You have to see it, though.
any punk rock kid, you know that there was this great dialogue between the Brits and the Americans.
I do the spoken word thing sometimes, and I ask the audience, who's the person most responsible for the spread of punk rock? And people go, Johnny Rotten or Joe Strummer or whatever. I go, no, it's former President Ronald Reagan, because he was such an asshole that people had to react against him.
So for the people that really knew what was going on, there was a lot going on in the 80s. It just wasn't going on in the overground.
I do believe in a fate that will fall on us if we do nothing.
It's almost like those who know are the ones that are supposed to know, and the ones that don't will never get it anyway. What was happening in the 80s would manifest with the explosion of Nirvana. Nirvana didn't explode in a single moment. That had been building up over years and years and years. The linear journey of the boot is almost like the linear journey of technology. In other words, you know, you can go from the wads and the skinheads and the punks and the West Coast scene, and then in about the 90s it goes boom.
This was the first time that we really, really saw the Doc Marten go mainstream, because then you had it, you know, it was like all the cool girls started wearing it. It was no longer like a guy thing, and it was a very mainstream, like, you know, the guys on Friends were wearing them, you know, the kids on 90210 were wearing them, but then even, you know, counterculture, you know, Empire Records, Liv Tyler is on the cover of the video in a pair of Docs. Obviously Claire Danes, like poster girl for sort of torture teenager, was wearing them on My So-Called Life.
Dr. Marten is symbol of freedom.
It's like a rebellious street where people just think whatever, you know, like F you kind of thing.
I'm not sure what it conveys to other people, but because I don't really think about what other people are thinking when I'm wearing them.
Because it's about quality, it's about being built to last.
I think there's kind of, you get that kind of like knowing glance when you see someone that wears them.
Just people that have been in Dr. Martens, they're like amazing people.
I think it's the spirit.
There's no bullshit there, it's just quality. It just works.
They are thinkers, boots.
They're not going anywhere, that's the thing. Like I say, it's like they become such classics. You know, the vampires are wearing them in Twilight, Rihanna's been wearing them, all the it girls in London. Like it's almost like they've been, you know, they've really exploded in London. We're just catching up here.
It's a real love affair. You have to break them in. So, you know, you're gonna spend a couple of weeks in a bit of pain, and then once you've reached that point, they're yours for life.